Welcome to Conversation for the Soul. I'm Alleson Gregary, and today I'm here with Mishlyn Verdon. And Mishlyn is centered in oneness and living from the soul. Welcome, Mishlyn. I love that introduction. That is so beautiful. What was the inspiration for that?
Thank you so much for having me. Well, that's kind of the nutshell. You said, give me a one-liner. And I thought, wow, how can you smush all that into one line? So really that's what it boils down to for me is I help people get into that juicy place within themselves where they're connected to more of themselves, more of their connection to everything that is. And when we can center ourselves in that place, we can go through life navigating in a way that gives our soul the opportunity to express and experience what we're here for and really feel aligned in that.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your awakening journey. How did everything start unfolding for you, or did you just come out of the womb and you were ready to go?
Well, I think I came out of the womb into like, holy shit, pardon my French, but yeah, I must have, if there's an application to come here and experience this life, I must have circled and starred and highlighted everything on the page because I've been through a tremendous amount of life experience. And so that started in utero, and I came into the world in some pretty heavy experiences, and first memories are of being in the crib because I had something happen that was very shocking to me. And so I remember just feeling unwanted and left alone a lot, and it wasn't anybody's fault. I don't blame any of my family members because as we get into the discussion a little bit more, I see it all as divine. It's all happening for me. And, it's beautiful to be able to look at those things that at one time were connected to the trauma I was experiencing and was stuck in patterns of trauma and stuck in patterns of thinking that limited me from living my life in a really free way. And so being able to have that experience that coming into this life, like I said, I must have circled and starred and highlighted all of that and said, give me the pro level. And then I got here, and yeah, it was a lot. So
bullet point some of those things. You don't have to explain them, just go down the list just so people can go, wow, I can relate to her.
I would say, I have an older sibling that just was not happy I was born. There's that comparison and competition aspect of things going on from day one. My mother was very depressed. My father was away and had been in and out of our lives for quite a bit up until I think he disappeared for six weeks before I was born. My mother, 9 months pregnant, was riding her bicycle with my sister in the bike seat and pregnant with me going to the grocery store by herself. And so some of these things, hopefully she's okay with me sharing that, because it's not about what anybody did or didn't do. It's just the life experience that I've been in, right?
Absolutely. Well, you guys signed up for that. You commiserate and go, hey, I'll do this to you, and then we'll do this. And
Exactly. And so that kind of thing. My father suffered from PTSD from the Vietnam War, and we had major incidences with that where my godfather had to come take us out of our home, and then he left, and I ended up with a stepfather who was super challenging, played my sister and I against each other, and was abusive in so many ways. And by the time I was 11, I didn't want to live. And I had recently navigating and as things come up in my life, I process out loud with my family directly to stop that pattern from happening and to release it with my mother and with my daughter and whoever it might be connecting with in my family. I talked with her recently about being 11 years old and not wanting to live. And she saved my life because she was depressed. I knew if I killed myself that it would kill her. And I didn't want to do that to her. And she shared with me that I saved her life too by being there and that. So we had this really juicy, heart-centered conversation about it, which was very liberating for both of us, I feel. And we got to say, hey, we made it through, and hey, look at us now, which is really, really beautiful. And so
put each other before yourselves, you know?
Yeah. And it was challenging too, because I was going through the stuff, you know, going through so much of it. And a lot of people say, oh yeah, we all go through stuff. Yeah, we all go through stuff. And it was tough. And I'm aware and was aware as a kid. So it was really disheartening. And so I went through all kinds of power struggles and things like that with my stepfather. And I think it was around, I don't know. My spiritual parents moved in next door to me when I was 7, Victor and Lunita. Lunita was from Chile and Victor was from LA. And they moved to Virginia Beach, Virginia, where I was born and raised. And they were really beautiful people. And I would say that, you know how sometimes you say they watered the seed. They watered the seed that's me. Well, they were like the grape, because they had this protection and sweetness and really beautiful things that they would share with me that I was like a sponge for, because they could see that I had this, I was having a hard time, first of all, and they could see that there was more to me than, you know, just the struggling kid next door. So they would invite me over for breakfast and tell me to think about something that might be on my mind. And they would hand me this little wooden box with cards in it. And in the cards, they would say, okay, now once you think of something you'd like some help with, pull one of these cards and read it and see if it's helpful. And I'd pull a card, and they were Edgar Cayce affirmation cards.
Oh my gosh.
It
Wow.
was really, really awesome to just have these little nuggets of wisdom that I could latch onto and go, yeah, that's helpful. And so because I was having those experiences, they gave me a couple of books. And I had been put back in 3rd grade because they said that I couldn't read as well as everyone else. And the truth of it is, later in life, I felt really bad about myself for a while because I got put back. I was in the LD class, which was the learning disabled. And I'm far from that, right? The issue that I realized that I had was that Dick and Jane Went Up the Hill was so boring to me, had zero meaning, and I'd rather be out there running up the hill myself, right? Yeah. And so I didn't want to read this stuff. I didn't want to sit in the chair. I wanted to be free. I wanted to express myself. I wanted to experience life, not just read about some other kids going and running around, right?
Right.
But Victor and Lunita gave me Illusions by Richard Bach. And I read that, and I read it cover to cover. And then after that one, they gave me Creative Visualization by Shakti Gawain. And those 2 books were, I would say, like a bit of a lifeline for me. I wasn't able to live those things, but they resonated with me so deeply that, you know, I would go back to, okay, creative visualization. I need to change my mindset. I need to focus on what it is that I want as if it's already so, and get my feelings in alignment with what it would feel like if it was already happening, and then say, this is something better. And I've utilized that throughout my life in different ways of, when I would get into a space where I was ready for the next thing, or ready for something new, or just had it, right? And so those books were really, really important for me. And as I continued on just went through all the trials and things of growing up as a teenager with an abusive stepfather. And I remember this one moment, it always kind of pops into my head as like this turning point for me, standing up for myself and saying, I'm not going to be a victim of this anymore. I think I was about 14. And we were having an argument about something, and his practice would just to be straight right in our faces as close as he could get and scream at us, spit, like he'd be spitting and whatever. And we would always just cry. And he was used to that reaction. And this time when he came to me in that, I just looked at him right in his eyes and was just looked at him and said, you know what? In my mind, I just said, this is BS. I was basically saying F you in my head because I had it with that. And I grew old enough to realize that this isn't right. And I wasn't going to stand for it anymore. And I wasn't going to be under that. And so I just stood there and just looked at him without crying and all that. Well, he didn't get the reaction he was looking for. So he headbutted me so hard to where I fell back. And I lost all respect for him. And that was it. And so from there, it was almost like I didn't feel like I could be at home. It was always just wanting to be outside or do art or create art. Those were my outlets. Those were my way of centering myself, of disconnecting. Through all of that, all of the different things that I went through, I found that I would hide in different ways. And most of the ways that I would do that, I would really just go inside of myself. Everybody would say, oh, you have such a rich imagination, or, oh, she's such a daydreamer, and all these things. But really, I was tapping into the inner world, and I didn't really recognize that that's what it was. And so in that space, I could understand that what they're going through didn't have anything to do with me, but I didn't have the tool to unwind it in my thinking, unwind it in how to live my life. And that's why it was such a blessing when I eventually met my mentor, which we'll talk about in a little while. But going through all of that, running away from home, and then my stepfather running away and trumping my runaway with, some extreme things. And it was just so much, got me a car, and then that got repossessed because he wasn't handling it correctly. And all these things was just one thing after the other. Well, then I guess I was about 17. I was put into this treatment center that was more like a private prison for over a year. It was a year and 2 months. And that was a really challenging time for me. And when as an adult, I think it was only maybe 4 or 5 years ago that one came up for me to process, because I was thinking, why is it that I'm having a hard time really asking what it is that I need or want? Like simple, basic things. And I would go deep into this process of allowing that to come to me so that I could understand where I was limiting myself and why I was holding back in certain areas. And it went back to that. And I was actually talking to a friend of mine, and he said something about the 12-step program. And I said, well, I know all about that. It was crammed down my throat for a year and 2 months. And when I was in this place, and he goes, well, what is that place? And I said, it was called Straight. And he said, I'm going to Google it. And he Googles it, and he said, holy crap, there's a whole website that is called Surviving Straight.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so the next morning I had my coffee. I'm like, I'm going to check out this website. Check out the website.
Oh no.
The video at the top of the screen says it has all of the newspaper articles of people suing them. And they were talking about them committing psyche murder and all of this kind of thing. And it was a very controversial place. And I was very stressed out. I was able to go back to high school during part of it. which was a nightmare also because I couldn't talk to anybody I knew. I had to go to school and see all the people I knew, but I couldn't talk to anybody or get put back to the beginning of the program. And so it was super challenging in that. And then getting out of there, or during that, I went to a community college for art and psychology, which I do a lot of those things today. It was what I was really drawn to. If I can pick 2 things instead of 6 classes, I actually dropped out of high school because I was in that program and it was too much for me to handle because I was taking care of other people who were in it also. And I had more people stacked on me because I'm such a good person, right? Which was my reflection back to that was beautiful in that, yeah, I'm still that same person that was willing to help the people that nobody else wanted to help. And so there was some reflection in there where it was also, even at my worst part of that older teenage years, after having come from, such a childhood, that even in there, I could recognize that part of me that really truly wants to help other people. I remember my mantra throughout my life has always been, if this helps me help one other person get through it or not go through it, it's worth it. And even as a little teeny kid, that it's been that. And so shortly after I graduated from there, I ended up getting married and started my family. And that was challenging too, because I was duped. I thought I was number 2. I was number 4. Thought I had 1 stepdaughter. I had 3, these kinds of things. And when I was divorced at 24 with a 1 and a 2-year-old, I'm doing it all myself with very little help. And I'd ask family for help and I would get responses like, oh, well, I would, but I wouldn't want you to expect it. Things like that, which hurt, and that was kind of a continuation of how I felt that I didn't fit there. I didn't really feel like I fit anywhere, honestly. Even in elementary school, I asked my mother one time, was it true or was it my imagination that I called the whole phone list of kids in my class and nobody wanted to come over and hang out? She was like, yeah, that was how it was. Wow. So it was just really lonely, really unsure of where I'd fit. I have big energy. I'm a vibrant person. And so going through all of that was deep. And so by the time I've been divorced for, let's see, a few years, and I'm working at a fitness center, working 2 jobs there so that I can wake up at 4 a.m, get the kids dressed, go over to the babysitters, let them in, put them to sleep on the couch, go to work, work the 2 jobs while babysitter wakes them up, feeds them, puts them on the bus, so that I'd have enough time in the evenings to have a good evening life with my kids, make dinner, do homework, hang out, do whatever we did. And then I had very little time for me. And so there was this feeling, I'm just going through the motions. I really need to find what it is that's gonna get me back to me. And I have this dear friend of mine who is really into astrology. And one day she comes over to my house and she said, oh, it's perfect opportunity for you to manifest what it is that you want. Full moon's in your sign, right? And so I said, oh, well, I know about manifesting. I read that book, Creative Visualization by Shakti Gawain, when I was, a teenager. And so I sat out in my driveway. I was a block from the ocean. I could hear the ocean. I had this one favorite song, Kitaro, the Silk Road, that I had listened to throughout my teenage years. I'd go to the ocean front and just really feel connected to nature and really feel connected to what I was experiencing. So I listened to that and I listened to the waves and I visualized my life as if it was already so. And I was to every detail for 3 hours. And you know how they say, be careful what you ask for?
Yeah.
Yeah. Got fired from my job, like all these things started happening and I was, fired over the phone even.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember calling my friend and I said, oh my gosh, I'm so, I don't even know what to do. I'm so upset. I helped them open this place and, they fired me over the phone. My daughter was sick. And, the long story short, I realized that I asked for it and I didn't have the courage to quit myself because I had obligations to my children, but I also didn't have the time to go job hunting, with all of that stacked day. And so I was liberated from my job and all these things. And I got really excited. I called her back a half hour later because she said, well, we'll go to lunch and we'll, she's my friend that's super helpful, right? We all have one of those, all need one of those. And so I call her back and I remember kind of hopping down the stairs, excited because I'm free. And loved the people, loved some of the interactions that I had there, but I wasn't living my life, right? And so I shared with her, I asked for this, and now I have the opportunity and space to go find something else. And she had a home that needed to be painted and cleaned up and ready for sale. And she said, we just did the guy gave us an estimate. I'd rather pay you to do it than someone else. So I immediately got some work that was flexible where I could look for something else and teach art classes for kids after school. And that's how I started after that, which was really beautiful. And but during that time that I was at the gym, and I was also saying, okay, I need more something else to get me back there. One of my things that I'd like to do is rearrange the bulletin board where everybody has their business cards and flyers and things like that. I like to be fair. So everybody needed to be seen, all of that. Yeah. I remember seeing this one flyer on there that said the 15th step, doorway to the inner world. And I was like, wow, that seems like really out of the box, deep, and sounds like it's in alignment with what I'm asking for. And I looked on there and it was, a few $100s, and I couldn't imagine how I was going to pay for that. But this feeling came to me that, you know what, you asked for this, it showed up. It's not your first time not knowing where all the money's going to come from. And somehow it all always works out. Yeah. And so I called my friend Suzanne and I said, let's go to this workshop. So we went to the Friday night. There's a demo and little, just an intro night. And I remember thinking, wow, I don't know what this is, but it's what I'm supposed to be doing. Because not only did it speak to that part of me that's really deep, I can go as woo-woo as you want to go, but I also needed to be practical. I need something that's going to help me with my life. Because I had some serious issues and I was so tied up in emotions and tied up being squished and stifled over and over again my whole childhood. It just felt like I needed to break free and I needed something really practical that was going to help me do that. I wasn't going to just sit there and be quiet and meditate and it was going to be cleared, right? I had clinical diagnosis of complex PTSD, severe or chronic depression, and ADHD. So with all of those things comes a lot of background, a lot underneath. And so this workshop I ended up going to, it was a 2-day workshop. I'm teaching the same thing next week or this coming weekend here in Hawaii. But I remember the whole weekend just being excited because it was so different. It was so interesting. And I had an amazing experience. So there I am in Virginia Beach, thinking about all these, looking online at all these classes I wanted to take. They teach hypnotherapy classes. They teach this inner world technique that I had just taken the workshop. And I'm basically drooling on all the topics and wanting to take them all. But I'm in I'm in Virginia Beach and the school's in San Diego. And I remember I had triathlete friends that had done Ironman and had done all the triathlons in San Diego, and they had money, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, I couldn't live in San Diego. The standard of living, this and that." And I thought, "Oh, I'm never gonna get there." And I just went, "Well, I'm never gonna say that, but hey, if it's meant to be, then I'll end up there." And I let it go. In that visualization though that I did, I was really visualizing myself being able to do something where I could help people. I visualized my home, my new car, my relationship where someone would understand my single parenthood and would understand me as a creative, that kind of thing. And it worked out that I ended up meeting the man I married, we were transferred from Virginia Beach to San Diego because of his job. And not until we had
Wow.
4 kids between us. I had 2, he had 2, and we had 2 dogs going across country, moving to another city. The last thing on my mind were those hypnotherapy classes I wanted to take, And so we were there. It must have been the first week or 2 that we were in town. We went to Old Town, this restaurant called Oh Hungry's. And we're waiting for our food. And I'm looking at Light Connection, our Vision magazine, while we're waiting for our food. And I see Joe's face, my mentor, and with an ad for the classes. And I got really excited because I had made it. And so the next day I'm unpacking boxes. And of course, one of the boxes that I open has his book in it, and then the next one is the folder from the class. And the thing that really made me throw up my hands and say, okay, I'll call, was that, like I said, 4 kids, 2 dogs. We had 2 pillowback couches that were always a mess. The kids, the remote control had been missing for 3 days. And I go into the living room on the 3rd day, and this place was a wreck. TV's on, pillows are everywhere, kids are outside playing, and I go to clean up and go to turn off the TV, and I went to push the button. And I don't think I really had thoughts that came to mind. I just had this feeling that I needed to go look over on the couch. So I went over to one of the couches, and where the arm and the cushion, what the base hold the cushion there, I reach my hand down in that corner, and my hand goes further in. I didn't realize that seam was open. And I reach in there and down in there, and I pull out the remote control with the flyer from that class.
Oh, geez.
Has his phone number and everything right there. And I was like, okay, I'll call. So I called him and said, hey, I'm getting all the synchronicity that's pointing to me to call you. And I've been wanting to take these classes, and I made it to San Diego. So I'd love to come see you and see, what we can do. And so I went in there, and it was great to see him. And we talked about all the classes, and I said, well, I just moved here. Not sure if I can afford to take all the classes. And he said, well, Lenora, this other woman that was working in there, was working on Millennium Woman materials, which are all about women being able to co-create and collaborate with one another without the comparison and competition, thing that we had been plagued with for so long. So he said, if you help her organize that work, then will trade for your classes. So I was there every day for 10 years and took 10 years of 15th step, 10 years of the self-mastery courses, 10 years of the hypnotherapy course. And I say I took 10 years of that. Some of those I taught those classes too, which I always learn something when I teach. So to me, I big geek that I am, when I'm into everything, science, spirituality, technology, you name it, I'm really, really love being able to find knowledge that really speaks to my heart, my soul, and that I can do something with. And so that started my journey in all of the work with my mentor, and really that next chapter of unwinding the trauma from my earlier years. And what a beautiful journey it's been. And yeah, now I'm in Hawaii offering the same process here.
Well, I love the story when we first met that you told about how you ended up in Hawaii too. You're a damn good manifester, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. Well, hey, I had learning like an early education about it.
Yeah.
And too, there's this thing that works both ways. Your consciousness, if you get into self-destructive thinking, you're bringing that to you too. Yeah. And so we have to be really careful about what we are processing and how we're looking at situations that come up. And so that's the centered piece for me. My friend, the one that told me about the full moon being my sign, was laughing because I'm a Libra sun sign. And usually that's about the scales, right? And there's this base that's on the ground. Well, I don't think I have any earth in my chart. And so that made me think one day about my life and all the things I've been through and my creativity. One of the funny things that I came up with one day, or came to me one day, was in life, if there's too many variables and not enough structure, it's like being jelly without the jar. It's just, you're all over the place. It's a sticky mess, that kind of thing. And in my life, with all these different things happening, instead of feeling like I had the scales like this, it was like I had these balls hurling through space and time and all this chaotic things and experiences. And I really wasn't sure where to put myself. This process helped me center myself and helped me come into that really juicy place where I'm connecting with more of myself, which gave me that equilibrium where when I'm in the center place, where I'm not attaching to worrying about the future or painting about the past or any of that stuff, and just saying what's here for me right now that I can use to go through life and go create the things that I want. And that centered place has been key. And so I guess that centered place is where you're connected to the soul aspect of yourself, where your soul is connected with all that is. I shared with you about Victor and Lunita. Victor used to always say this phrase that I use today, and I love it. He would always say, thank you, isness, for the business. Because how you say it is what it is, and everything is happening, and it's all happening for you. And he would always say, well, you either have a challenge to rise to help you grow and expand and become more of who you're meant to be, or, some beautiful things are happening for you to celebrate life. And so I would always use that to say, okay, well, this doesn't feel so good. So how is it helping me? And my mentor was really good at pointing me in that direction too, with the 15-step process, which is you being able to go into the inner world, ask direct questions, receive divine healing and divine teaching, and bring it back. So me going from San Diego, I moved to LA for a couple of years. And then in LA, I got to a point where I didn't have anything holding me there. And my kids had flown the coop. So it was more of me finally being able to choose what it was that I wanted to do. And I had 4.5 years between LA and Hawaii, where I moved to the Central Coast. Mm-hmm. And I decided that that's where I was going to find out more about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to flavor my life and what I'm actually interested in. And also really go into some deep embodiment work. And at that point, I must have had almost 20 years worth of career in this inner worlds, altered states therapy, had done some research with a medical doctor using these techniques, which was awesome, and worked with many, many people and had a front row seat in their unfolding and expanding also, that I really wanted to make sure that I was living within everything that I understood to be true. And those 4 years were not without beautiful challenges that helped me do just that. And so I moved to the Central Coast. When I was in LA, I was working primarily with artists and creative people, actors, writers, musicians, all sorts of people like that, because I understood that jelly in the jar thing. We need to find containers. We need to find structure that works for us. So I started my Eleutheria program, which is the Greek word for freedom and liberation of the self. And as I'm working with people in that, I'm realizing, yeah, they're all just like me. They all have the same thing. And LA is not conducive for super highly creative people trying to figure themselves out, because there's so many variables, and it's hard. If you're an artist that fortunate enough to have the structure piece too, either internally or you learned it externally, you're good to go, because that's a beautiful place to, express the arts and all of that. And it can be one that helps push you to the point where you, one way or the other, you're going to get it together. And so I thought, what are the basic things that we need as creatives to really be able to build ourselves personally and professionally? And what came to me were 3 simple words: work, stay, create. We need meaningful work, a place to stay, and space to build ourselves inside and with our art, or whatever the form of expression is. And so I do this thing I call bubble up, bubble down, where I take that big brown paper from the hardware store that you usually put on the floor to when you're painting, and a Sharpie, and I write work, stay, create in the middle. And then off of that, where would this even take place? And, who would do it? And I just allow myself to basically juice my imagination and my creativity, because I can go all the way deep in that too, and come up with all kinds of things I can never possibly accomplish in one lifetime, but by myself at least. But it allows me that opportunity to exercise my creativity and my vision for what this could expand into. And then I take a step back and I say, okay, so where am I right now? And what do I need to, where do I even start in doing something like this? And it was, okay, so where are these farms, or where would I be able to bloom this idea that I have? And I went on Craigslist and I found this 160-acre vineyard, and a man who had been battling the banks for almost 10 years trying to save his vineyard. He was a writer, a small boutique vineyard, and was selling to all of the small mom and pop stores, things like that, that when 2008, the economy was super challenging for a lot of people, and a lot of those stores were closing, and things were really challenging for him as well. And so he posted his story, and it resonated with me. So I reached out to him and said, look, I can't buy your vineyard, but I have an idea of how you might be able to get some help, make some money, that sort of thing. And he invited me up. So within 5 days, I'm 5 hours away, and the person I was living with, you're going where? With who? Like what? It's like some crazy thing that I was doing. So I went and ended up having a really deep conversation with this man. And I asked him if I could bring other people up to help him. And he needed his hot water heater repaired and a lot of other things. The living conditions were super challenging for him, and it was a whole other case. I called Farm Aid. I called all sorts of places to really help this man. And I had artists from LA go up for the weekend, and we worked, stay created in just a weekend type of situation where we helped him with his hot water heater and cleaned up some things and stayed. And then one of the girls that came, she did some beautiful reclaimed wall art. And so that was the start of this idea that I had. And then when the kids flew the coop and I'm in LA with nothing holding me there, I thought maybe it's time for me to go just do this for myself and give myself the meaningful work, place to stay, and space to find out what I want, because I had been through so much in my life, one thing after the other, into being a mom, single mom, all of that, and just, divorced for a second time, and had been single for a while. And when I decided that I was just gonna put everything in storage or sell things and move into a trailer and go find the farm and all of that, I talked to the man that had the vineyard. He said, well, I don't know how long I'm going to have this place, because it was coming down to the foreclosure. And he said, you're welcome to start here. So that's what I did. I was there for 1 month. And there was this sign that every time I went to town that I would see, it was the Red Wing Horse Sanctuary. And I remember thinking, wow, I'd really love to meet with the horses and things like that, because I'd only had a couple of experiences with horses growing up, and they weren't great, but there was something drawing me to the horses there. And so I called over there and ended up becoming a volunteer. And I was volunteering 3 or 4 days a week at the horse sanctuary, which was so beautiful, because I realized that place that I was able to go to and holding space for people and holding space for myself for so many years, and understanding people and myself for the trauma and the trials and all of the different things that I had going on. The horses that were at a sanctuary, that a lot of them come from abuse or neglect. Some of them wouldn't even want to talk to anybody or even come over. And I was having these amazing experiences where horses that weren't wanting to talk to anybody were eating out of my hand for the first time, eating out of anybody's hand, and then having the ability for other people to come and give them food too, So it was like this whole thing of me being able to even help the horses and to connect with them in a way that felt really good. So knowing that my time at the vineyard was limited, I created this flyer. I decided that I want to be on a horse ranch. So I created a flyer that had a picture of my trailer, had a picture of my little dog Huckleberry, and a picture of me with Mystic the burro, the beautiful white burro, fuzzy, just cutie. And then just said, need a hand, want to trade, and have, I'm a happy volunteer at the sanctuary, and this is what I'm looking for. This is what I need. And I didn't know where to put it though, because this place where I was living was out in the middle of nowhere. You have to go 45 minutes to Provisions. There's a market that sometimes has milk right there in town. And then the gas station sometimes has gas. So I would have to go really far away to even meet people. So I really didn't know where to put this. So I would put it on the bulletin board at the market. I put it at the boot barn in town, and different things like that. But it really didn't have the feeling that was going to do it. So this one day I was going over for my volunteer shift at the sanctuary, and as I'm driving there, I'm on the dirt driveway leaving my place. This road runner comes out in front of me and is going super fast and leading the way down this dirt driveway. And it came to me that, okay, so roadrunner means swift action. It's the metaphor. The way that they are in life is helps us understand. And, everything's happening for us. So this roadrunner leading the way for me said, I need to lead with swift action. So I went over to the sanctuary, and I did one of the things that I know to do. I visualized myself living on this horse ranch as if it was already so, in such gratitude for my opportunity to live there and trade for my stay and care for the horses. And I remember just saying, okay, this is something better. And I'm at the sanctuary doing this. And when I got back to my place, I said, okay, so I'm going to find the horse ranches, and I'm going to send this flyer directly to every single one I could find. So I went on Google and I researched where the horse farms are, anywhere from, I had a 2-hour radius, basically. It was from Lockwood, where I was living, to Arroyo Grande, and just emailed everyone that had an email listed. I wrote a little note that said, if you or someone you know needs a hand, I'm willing to trade. Here's, my information, see flyer attached, all this. And if they didn't have an email, then I went on Facebook. Everybody likes to show off their horses. Most horse ranches have a page. So I would find their page and send them a messenger message with the flyer, same message, that kind of thing. The very next day I get a call, beautiful man, Dwayne, who he and his family are so, so kind. Anyway, he calls me and says, I got your flyer and I'm here at the ranch if you want to come over and take a look. And I said, I'll be there in 20 minutes. And so I go over there. 20 minutes later, it was Morning Star quarter horses. And it was only 6 miles away from where I was living.
Wow.
2-hour radius. It was only 6 miles away.
Yeah.
So I go over there. He introduces me to 33 horses. And then we start talking about hookups. He ended up pulling my trailer 2 days later over there. It was like the 11th hour of the foreclosure too. So it was all, I didn't know where I was going, any of the things, but I had to just trust that something was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And Roadrunner showed up, and I went into that thing that I had learned from Shakti Gawain and Illusions by Richard Bach, and some of those little things that it was seeded along the way, and also working with Joe for so many years, that it was beautiful how even at the last moment, it all worked out so beautifully. And I was there for a year, and I was able to really get to know the horses. I would water them every morning, and I would rake the barn in a chevron pattern and spray it down for the dust. And in that, I listened to a lot of audiobooks because it was a challenging situation there. The owner of the ranch had another ranch that he lived on, and I was there with the ranch manager and his wife, which was a challenging situation because I felt like it was this hypocritical cowboy evangelist and his jealous wife. And that was kind of the scene I went into. And bless them, like I've used the 45 minutes to go for provisions to process. I understand why they're the way they are. So that's not a judgment. That's just what I was experiencing as I was navigating, working there and living there. And so I would go through these things, and I ended up listening to Illusions by Richard Bach on an audiobook while I'm mucking stalls. And it was so amazing because I remember it making a full impression on me. But also, interestingly, I would say I'd read that book, but I couldn't tell you what was in it. I just remembered that it was really, really spoke to that part of me that was deep. And as I'm listening to it, I'm like, no wonder I do what I do. No wonder this has been my path. And it really was fascinating for me to revisit that. And during that time, I also, the only radio station that I could get through was all 70s stuff, which was all of my childhood theme songs and all of the stuff. So it was a rich time for me to process beginning all the way through, and what was in me that made me feel offended by the jealousy or the manipulation or whatever the things that were happening. And so I was able to love them for where they are in their journey, and love them for helping show me some things that I needed to refine within my own heart. And after a year, I said, okay, this has been great and it's been fun. And I've really, really, really enjoyed my time with the horses. And it's time to move to the next thing. And so I had started putting it out there that I wanted a new space and ready for the next chapter, all of that. So I Googled spiritual community, Paso Robles, and ended up finding a place in Atascadero. And so I would go there on Sundays and met with all these people who at least had some, like minds, or, would speak my language, because I was out of it for a while as far as people that I could talk to on the level where I was used to talking. And so I put the word out there, and within 3 months, I had a really beautiful experience where I went to sound healers, sound healing and meditation circle. And they said, oh, we would love to have you at our ranch, but we just rented it out, but we'll keep you in mind. We'll keep you in mind. Well, 2 days later, they called me back and they said, oh, well, we were in Cambria and we have a friend that might have space for you. And we're doing dinner and a movie tonight, so come join us. And I said, okay, cool. So when I go to I'm putting the key in the ignition to go over there and meet this man and talk about moving to Cambria. As soon as I put the key in the ignition, a bald eagle flew in front of me. I said, this is going to be good.
Wow.
Eagles have always been present for me in my life. I grew up on Eagles Nest Point in Virginia Beach, where my grandfather built the home I grew up in. And my mentor, Joe, wrote a book called Bringing the Eagles of Consciousness to the World. And so eagles have always been very, very much present for me. And I always know it's going to be good. Eagles are home to me too. So I go over there and I see him, and there's this little bit of recognition, and I always get these phrases that come. And when I saw him, the phrase that came is, we have work to do. Right. And so ended up going to dinner, talking about moving up there, and ended up moving to Cambria for about 3 years. And we had work to do, which was great, because there would be things that would happen that would be, I wouldn't really appreciate in the moment. And instead of pointing fingers, I would say, okay, ouch, that hurts. And I'm going to go away for a couple days or a couple weeks and find out. Remember, I told you that a few years ago is when I processed straight, and what came up for me in that. And that was one of the things that came up during that connection. And during that, we got work to do. And like I said, embodiment. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. This is all happening for me. How can I take this perceived abuse and make it, do something with it that can free me? And so I went through this kind of a thing with him for a while. And I said, I would come back and say, okay, that didn't feel so good. And this is what I learned about myself. So thank you. And then it got to the point where I learned so many deep things and was starting to really feel the value of it, because every single time I would do that, there'd be a deep, deep nugget that even in the nearly 20 years I had been doing this work directly, there was still some residue in there that I knew needed to go. So I had this conversation with him one day where I said, look, you're my hero. And I don't always like everything that you do or the way that you treat me or anything like that. But everything, this dance that we've done has helped me go into those places that I might not have done before, not have been able to do before. And, he called me just a few weeks ago and said, that he was having this experience with his dog and really feeling this love. And I said, oh, you're finally allowing the love from the dog. And he said, you knew the whole time, huh? I said, yeah, you two were meant for each other. And I'm so happy that you're having that love fest with him. And he said, you're truly one of my best friends. And I tell everybody that. And the world would be a better place if everyone had a friend like you, or if that everyone could be a friend like you. And that really touched me, because what it told me was that was super, super hard to take something that felt so painful and say, I'm going to go deal with myself, and I'm going to leave you to deal with yourself. And I'm still going to love you anyway, right? I'm still going to appreciate the gift that even that was for me in our interaction. And because I was coming from that place and leading from my soul and my wisdom of my soul, because that's wisdom of the soul.
Yeah.
He saw it as me being his best friend, which was so beautiful. And to me, that's playing the long game. Because if I really told people the details of the interaction they would say, oh, that's messed up. You need to get away from him, or whatever it is, or they'd say, oh, no, you don't handle it like that. You fight back, or you do this, or you do that. Everybody wants to join the I don't know. I can't think of any other
drama
word.
fest.
Yeah, the pity committee, or the whatever, the understanding also, because people are compassionate, or they want to be let you know that they understand you, and that they'll love you anyway, which is beautiful also. But that was really, really awesome. And even I taught a 15-step workshop while I was there. It was really, really great. And then I really didn't fit in the community so much. I would go to town. We were 6 miles up a dirt road off of another, I don't know, 5 or 6 mile country road up in the mountains. And I would come down to go to the little store, or go to the beach, or go into, some other part of nature. But I was in nature a lot, either with the horses or with nature, for a lot of that time on the Central Coast. I spent a lot of time by myself again, and I just really didn't find that I was feeling connected to the community. Now, I'd found home inside of myself, but I hadn't found home yet in my community or environment. So I was still kind of searching for home. And so I put it out there again. Okay, what's the next chapter? What's next for me? Where am I going? Because this doesn't feel like it. And that's when all of the things started happening to come to Hawaii. Tremendous synchronicity, things that you just can't make the stuff up. That all the doors started opening for me to come here. And I was having mystical experiences and synchronicity that was just undeniable, and all this full circle things, and so ended up making that decision and flying out here, and I feel super connected here. And wow, that's that whole coming to decide Hawaii and the synchronicities. And my last year, I'm coming up on, 2 days from now, it'll be my 1 year on the Big Island.
Wow.
So that year has been, deep also. Yeah, super deep.
So what are you doing on the Big Island now? You're doing your 15-step training program. Do you want to give a brief overview of that?
Sure. This is the 15-step process is the process. I went to that workshop, and is the one main tool that really helped me unwind all of the patterns and trauma of my past. And I had worked in research, and worked with Joe, taught it in India, all of that. And Joe passed the legacy of his work to me about 3 years ago. And Joe passed 2 months before I moved to the island last year. And so for me coming to the island, I had a lot of challenges that come up. A lot of people will tell you when they move to the island, sometimes there's a lot of things that get churned up again, and beautiful for me to go through that. And to the point where I have this, I affectionately refer to one period of time in there as the total eclipse of the Mish, because like the complete nothing, everything is just shattered. And with that, I realized that it was perfect opportunity for me to exercise freedom and practice grace. And it was so beautiful. And on the other side of that, I felt, okay, now I'm ready. Now I feel capable of carrying this work and sharing this work the way I feel it could do it justice and serve my mentor, who was such an epic human being in my life. So now on that side of it, I'm super excited to host my first Big Island workshop open to the public. I've worked with a few people since I've been on the island, but more in a private setting. So I'm excited to share that forward. And what it is it's a unique form of self-hypnosis where you go into the inner unconscious and ask for and receive divine healing and divine teaching. And the way that Joseph and his guides and masters and the beings that he worked with developed it was so that every human being, no matter your walk of life, can tap into the inner world and know what you're doing, where you're going, and to be able to regulate your vibration so you can trust what you're getting and bring it back.
Wow.
So you can apply it in your life. And so basically creating the structure that is needed in the inner world, because the inner world is primarily the more feminine aspect of life. If the outer, more material life is the more masculine side of life, it's like we really need both for our physical expression here as human beings. And so being able to go in there with that container and that structure is what made it feel so accessible and so practical and so useful for me. Instead of sitting there and drifting off into these thoughts, or what am I going to say next, which engages your rational mind and takes you out of that vibration. It's really difficult to learn how to have conversations and learn to harness the power of your soul and your life force energy in that, and utilizing those tools that we learn, like I learned from creative visualization. The process in the weekend workshop, the first day, you learn about thought and thinking, consciousness, the thinking systems, and how that all works with you. And you learn about the process. And day two, you have a little homework on the one night you ask for a dream. So in the morning, we go over dream interpretation so that your inner world is always trying to communicate with your outer world. And a lot of us ignore that. A lot of us, for times, dismiss these inklings that we get, or the synchronicities that we have, that are very natural and very useful if we pay attention to them. And so there's a lot of things that come through dreams. And Joe, every morning for 10 years, I'd make coffee and we'd go sit in his office and talk in the morning. We started our day and he'd say, "Did you have a dream last night?" And I'd say, "Yeah, Joe, I had a dream." And we'd go through it. And then we would always formulate a question. He said, "You want to do a session about it?" And then we'd go do a 15-step session. And this was our practice, like almost every day. And if I didn't have a dream, then he'd say, "Okay, so did you have a waking dream?" Like the Roadrunner would be a waking dream, because that's something unusual or something that stood out that was, something that maybe I can get some information from. So I'm very practiced in being able to look for, those signs and symbols and things that are pointing you in the right direction of what to ask. Because the ask and you shall receive is in so many different books, philosophies, religions, all of that kind of thing. So really important to refine your questions and make sure that they're really getting to the heart of what it is that you want. So being able to, in the morning, go over dreams to help people refine their question is really beautiful. So then we go into the questions and we learn how to guide someone through the process, because each person in the class, you pair up, and each person has the opportunity to go to the 15th step and the opportunity to guide. So when we first pair up, one person goes, one person guides, and then we come back in a circle and we share about all the experiences. And then I get to help them refine the questions or help them look at how they could have, worked in as the guide a little bit better, or where they could have done something like that, just to help them really refine being a guide. And then we switch, and whoever was guiding before gets the opportunity to go, and the person that visited last time gets the guide. And the beauty of being able to learn both really well is that when you go into that process and you get into what we call the one vibration or the oneness, where you're connected to that which is greater than all things and to life force energy and all the guidance you ever need, when you get to stay in that place and let go of your rational mind, and you don't have to think about what the next question is, you get to stay in that juicy place and get to be able to interact with the guide saying, ask this question, and what do they tell you? And then they say it back to you, so that you really get the opportunity to start having a dialogue and stay in that vibration, which is key. And then when you have the opportunity to guide and you switch, then you get to really hone in on what's next, and you get to understand how to ask the next questions. What is right thought about that? Or what are these other little phrases that we use to help get the juicy bits? And so when you start guiding, it's meant to be self-hypnosis fully, but in the beginning, we highly recommend practicing both guiding and going, so that you can really lock in both of those, so that it's like riding a bike. You can, steer and pedal at the same time. When you're a little kid, you're like, oh, I got to go do this, but I got to pedal, So you get to stay in that space and be in that vibration of tapping in and knowing what's next, without having to reach so far and getting, what was I supposed to say, and getting out into the rational mind. The whole goal is for people to be able to bring that forward in their day-to-day life, resonating from that place, saying, now that I have my eyes open and I'm walking throughout my day, I'm going to remember this feeling and this tapped in centeredness, living from my soul, right? And so that's the beauty of what I do. And I have this weekend, I have the date, my first one. Then I have another one in September, another one in November. And in January, I'm planning, the next one will be an embodiment retreat, where we actually do the 15th step work and get into other things where we're learning to embody that with our eyes open and doing other activities, utilizing that juicy space, which is really exciting for me. So we're going to be doing practicums in between, where we'll just do the circle up, one person guides, one person goes, we'll debrief and then switch and debrief and then have a dinner. So I'm really excited about really being able to bring this to people here in Hawaii, where I feel so blessed to be able to live and to be able to work in community. One of the things that, because I've always worked with artists and musicians, and I know that the arts really help people get into that centered space, and nature also. I'm doing work with people in the community, Hawaiians actually, to help really create some exciting things that bring people together, so that we can talk story and help push forward this being able to heal and maintain and sustain Hawaiian culture. And so for me, being here as a visitor, I want to do everything I can to be a good neighbor and a good a friend. And so I'm excited to be able to get into the arts too, because that's my other passion. I can get super deep into all that inner world stuff, but the first place that helped me navigate the owies of my childhood was art and nature. So I'm really excited to bring that, because that's what brings out the excitement for people. That's what lights people's hearts up. And so for me, the more we can do that, the better. And some of the synchronicity that got me to the island, that I was, wow. One of them was art. I was sketching in my journal soul canoes. And I was thinking, you know, we are all kind of in our own boat, and we're navigating these rough seas, and we never know what the weather's going to be like any given day. And so I had the idea of drawing these boats with weather and, you know, all different kinds of things. So I had drawn about 6 of them. Must have been 3 weeks later is when I started having the discussion about moving to Hawaii. And then somebody said, oh, you have to get this book. And so I got the book, and on the back of it, it said, everyone's navigating their own soul canoe and la, 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 la. I'm like, wow, you just can't make this up.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. And so I started looking into something that had to do with that. And it was the navigational star of Hawaii. The zenith star is called Hokulea. And Hokulea, looking at it, is the star that had come to me years ago. And Edgar Casey was connected to it also, is Arcturus. And so Arcturus is the zenith star here. And that's been my navigational star for my heart, my center, my soul, because I know that if I come with joy and enthusiasm and excitement for life and whatever it is that I'm doing, good, bad, or ugly, like whatever, thank you, isness, for the business, right? So if I can come from that resonance of being excited for the opportunities and excited for the celebration, that's awesome. So I thought, okay, Hokulea is part of this community organization because it is their navigational star and it's my navigational star, and it makes a whole lot of sense. So I'm getting ready to do some arts and entertainment, concert things, and I'm really excited about that also. So I have this really juicy combination of helping people go super deep and then also helping people get lit up just with the arts and entertainment, like wherever your level of participation is, you know, that's it. You know, so I'm excited about all of that.
That's
and
amazing.
It all is just funneling in just so easily.
So if people are looking for you, Mishlyn, where can they find you?
I would say right now, Instagram,
Okay.
which I'll share my Instagram handle that you can put attached to this. I'm overhauling, like I did every piece of paper that has to do with my workshop. I just overhauled. I'm overhauling websites and all of that. So there's not a whole bunch out there, but there are some things where you can get in touch with me directly, and I would be happy to hear from anyone who has questions.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll post it below for sure. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's so beautiful, and you are so vibrant and full of energy. I just love it.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm
bet.
just blessed to be here. Thank you for the invite.
All right, my dear. We'll say goodbye to everybody.
Bye.